Kia ora everyone and welcome back to Muse. Today on episode 7, no I'm not going to do that, we have the amazing Shannon, who is also a music teacher. He's actually head of music at Birkenhead College. He plays in a band called Swerve City. He also has his own project called Imposter Syndrome. General, a nice guy that has a lot of knowledge and experience that he can share with you and that I'm going to learn about. So welcome to the show, Shannon. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me, Ben. Yeah, doing well, man. Doing well. Just sort of here in the house. We've got, you hear a few saws and whatnot. We've got people still building away down in our garage. So, yeah, hopefully that won't come into play too much.
It'll be fine.
Nice to see you, man.
People can deal with it. We typically start the show with you talking about, how you got into music and, through high school, if you entered RockQuest, how you found it working with others. Like, it's kind of, you get about, 4 or 5 minutes to talk about that before we start talking about other things. So the mic is yours, man.
Great. Neither of my parents were sort of musical in a sense. My aunt she was a music teacher and continued through education right up through the ministry. So I was learning piano from her when I was about 5 till 10. When I was about 7, I had been obsessed with the Lion King soundtrack and the Cat soundtrack. So music always was just strongly in my world. But I was, long story short, I heard Bohemian Rhapsody when I was 7, and when the guitar solo came on, I had what I still consider this day the first of my sort of synesthesia moments, where my whole world went, my whole frontal cortex, everything just went purples, reds, oranges, atomic bombs blowing out. It gave me this world of color I didn't know existed, and to this day, guitar and music in general, still gives that amazing sort of my own world to me. So I'm forever grateful to music and forever happy to give back. Queen I was obsessed with Queen right up till I was, still am really, but I would talk about it to anybody and everybody, adults who, I met a few people who've been at the Wembley concert, and I just used to grill them with questions.
My dad was there, bro.
What a concert. What a concert.
Was that actually, no, he was at Live Aid. Was that the one in Philadelphia?
Well, Live Aid's known as the super famous one. And
that's the one he was at. Sorry, that's the one he was at. But I'm pretty confident. Where was that one? Was that in America or was that in...
No. Oh, there was... Live Aid was simultaneously.
That's right.
Philadelphia.
But where did Queen play?
Wembley.
Yes, so my dad was there.
Yeah, wow. So that's known as the greatest show of all time. Their 25-minute set there. Yeah. And it really is insane. From there, I sort of got into heavier music. By the time I was a young teen, it was Marilyn Manson and Tool that really took me. Followed a few years later by Alice in Chains. And so those two bands those 3 famous Manson albums, from Antichrist through to Mechanical Animals and Hollywood, really gave me a love for the conceptual side, which probably explains a lot of my love for the early Queen stuff too, the really progressive side. Tool, I don't really have to say much more than the name, and what comes with that.
We've talked about this lots, man. We love Tool.
Yeah. Floyd, obviously the big conceptual Floyd stuff. I just love it. I love the epic. I played French horn for 7 years in a concert band from year 7 to 13 at St. Peter's College. That took me to Samoa, Melbourne, all sorts of places.
That's so cool.
I loved it. We were there 7:45 Monday and Wednesday. I was there every week, and got to play the town hall everywhere, and got to. There's nothing quite like when you make great music, and we were a good concert then. I'll be honest, it was a really, really good one. There were gold medals and things like that, and playing music at that level with 60 other people, it's a whole different vibe.
Yeah, man.
Being in a rock, and you really learn your place in terms of the timbre of your instrument, how it fits. And I'd analyze how it fit into the composition, because I've always been into composition, So, yeah, and that sort of leads me to where I am now. There's a couple of bands I love. Biffy Clyro at the band today. They're not really known too down under, but one of the biggest bands in the world.
Yeah, man. Amazing.
Those three-piece, absolutely love them. Seen them live a few times. One of the best bands I've ever
Is
seen.
that
So
they've got that song Chandelier, is it right?
the Black Chandelier,
Black
which like
Chandelier.
many times is probably my least favorite on the whole album.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so the interesting thing, I actually talked to my students about this in regards to group performance. There's a video of him playing it at a show, and then the second verse he forgets his own lyrics, and then the audience is singing, but he's not bothered. He carries on. It's like that's just part of the gig, man. You're gonna make
Yeah.
mistakes. It's a really good example of that. But great
I
band.
remember, but yeah, exactly. I remember the first time I flew to Oz for a band was Alice in Chains when they reformed, and got to see them at the Soundwave in '09. I think it was them and Nine Inch Nails headlining. And
Wow, great.
the opening act was the Dillinger Escape Plan, who
Yeah, that's intense.
wicked, right? And I'd seen them in Auckland in that little underground basement. Like, that was nuts. But during the first song, man, the guitarist, he was going, as you know, he was going so crazy that he snapped his guitar neck. And so,
What?
because there's two guitar players, the poor other guy had to start filling in both parts. And this guy just danced with his guitar around like that, going crazy, and danced for the rest of the song. And it got the
Nice.
crowd amped up. And you're right, those moments are very famous performance. Queen, when they played Rock in Rio, I think it was 81, 85. It's one of the, I think they played both those years. It's one of them, and him and Freddie and Brian May were doing Love of My Life.
Yes.
After about the second line, the crowd was just so loud, Freddie stopped singing and guided them. And then about halfway through, Brian May just had to stop and tell the crowd how much it meant to them. And you're just watching this level of emotion and kind of think, there's nothing, I think, in the world that can really relate to that in terms of what people must have been feeling.
Well, I mean, I'll jump in here and just say that when Foo Fighters played the Super Top back in, I actually can't remember what year. Were you there?
I was the loudest concert I've ever heard.
And he even stopped during Everlong and yelled at us. He's like, "You guys are too loud. We can't even hear ourselves on stage."
Yeah,
those moments are magical.
That crowd was 5,000. That crowd was insane. He still talks about that gig in interviews.
Yeah, man.
I remember, he went to have a drink and the crowd's just like forcing him to drink the whole thing, and then trying to play a guitar riff and the crowd's just screaming the riff louder than he's playing it. You couldn't even hear the band half the time. It was out of this world.
Before we move on to your music, I just want to mention one more thing about that concert, and that was the intro where they just had the background music playing, and then all of a sudden the lights went down without anyone knowing, and the guitar comes running into the first song, and I just
on it. Yeah.
I was just like, what? Anyway, basically this show is about talking to you about your songwriting, so that my students and other students that watch this can kind of learn about how you do things. So Swerve City's got a new song coming out called Sink Like Stones, which I got to review for music.net.nz, and I really, really liked it. And there were a couple of points that I'm gonna a couple of points I want to bring up so that you can discuss those as we go. Structure, as we've mentioned before, is a big part of music. It's really important to have a structure, and I really like the way that that's structured. So I guess you could talk to me about that. But the bass line, I know you play bass in Swerve City. The bass line, man, when that kicks into the verse, there's it took a couple of listens while I was reviewing to really make sense of it, and I was like, man, these are clever things. And what I'd like you to kind of discuss is how do you guys, because you write together, essentially, how do you guys come up with these and know that that's kind of like what to do? And I'm just interested to kind of, for you to kind of have a dialogue with yourself while I'm listening, and so you can explain how you do this sort of stuff.
Okay. Yeah, man, I'll go a few steps back. I will preface this by saying that the guys in the band are total pros, man. It's really cool to be in a band with these guys. I'd not played bass in a band before. There was a bit of quid pro quo from JP. He'll help me out. I'll help his new band out on bass. And I've watched JP from quite without sounding like a stalker, but seen his bands, enjoyed his music in his previous groups, and the opportunity to play in a band with him. He's going to hate me for saying this, but I was jumped right in. Of course, I was going to say yes. And Kev and JP had started working together and recorded a bunch of demos. And I listened away. I like them. So I isolated the bass parts, learnt them. So that's how it started. Those two sort of really writing the basic essence of these songs, and Sink Like Stones wasn't one of them. But we got in a room, and the four of us, I'd known JP, I'd never met Adam, and I'd never met Kev, although I will say that I think, and I've told Kev this, for quite a while, he was always the number one person on Facebook's people you may know. It was always Kevin Jack. And so when I got there, I went, I know you, but I don't, but I know you. And so it was quite funny. It was one of those, yeah, this is probably going to work. And the four of us got along like a house on fire straight away.
Sweet.
Doesn't always happen, especially with four pretty full-on creatives in a room.
But that makes the creative process better, because when you fling ideas around, having that confidence to say, like, you don't think it works, or that you do think it works, and that you could suggest this. Do you reckon that's an important part of writing as a group, is having that open communication where nothing is left unsaid?
Yeah, absolutely. Checking some of your stuff at the door and bringing, and I think having been in bands before, you kind of get to know what the strengths of your personality to bring to the table are, and what things to certainly keep under the rug. Everyone's got their things, and well, that was sort of the process I came in, because I wanted to be in a band with these guys and be professional and make it work. And I think you're willing to compromise is it's an obvious one that happens in any form of relationship, and so when it came to Sink Like Stones, we'd been working away on the songs that Kevin JP had written, and by then Adam had sort of started coming into his own on the drums, bringing sort of really strong backbone beat to it, and so I started trying really hard to groove with him, and the parts would start changing from just playing what they had recorded on bass, which was essentially, as a lot of the time on quick demos, similar to guitar parts, just to get the idea across, and really kind of figuring out where the bass can. I found that I had to get a tone first that I thought really fit in the band. I sold a really nice guitar I had that I wasn't ever using, but I just really liked it. It was time to go to someone who I knew would treat it well, and that funded me a really nice G&L bass, which changed everything for me. As soon as I was hearing the tone I wanted come out of the bass, and I could start, I do, but a tone is really, really important. From a teaching perspective, Lance Sewer, one of the great New Zealand guitar players and teachers at the Auckland University, he always hammered to me timing and tone, timing and tone, timing and tone. He's right. Man, he's so right. Without your rhythm, without timing, and that's what I'm sure you do the same. You talk to students, rhythm stands at the top of the elements list.
Man. One of the biggest things I got taught, and I teach today, is, like, first of all, not to overplay. Like, one of the things that you find with students writing songs, especially when they're in a group and they're trying to bring their own flavor to it, is that they kind of feel like they need to add so much that they become the focus of the track, not really understanding that actually the job is to support the song, not yourself. And that's something that I learned a lot about, which, through high school. What are your thoughts on that?
In a collaborative sense, absolutely. I think if you pull off a solo album, you can do whatever you want.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So having a balance, because if you've got these ideas where you want 48 guitar tracks, then go for it. What's stopping you? But when it comes to writing a song that is commercially viable and but also really respects the initial essence of the song, you have to be aware of what that essence is, and so thinking about it, understanding it, not letting yourself get in the way. You're absolutely right.
So that's a good place to jump in and say, well, then, so you got the music, everyone's bringing their own element there. They're creating it, right? And so you go away, and then, so in your band, do you have one person that kind of is the, like the person that just checks to make sure the idea works? Because here's a fascinating point that I bring up a lot, is that we can get attached to our ideas, and when somebody says it doesn't work for the song, we get really defensive. And then someone's taught me how to kind of like understand it. No, it's not about you, it's about the song. Don't get defensive. So I've
been very guilty of that in my 20s.
Yeah.
Very, very guilty. I've probably severed some good creative relationships as a result. Maturity, age, and just growing and learning, I think, plays a really big part in that. And that's unfortunate, because you can't really say it till you know it, until you've been through it. My experience. What happened, I did digress a lot. What happened was I was actually JP, I would say, is the key in terms of producing producing the end result. In many ways, helps that he's the main rhythm guitar player and lead vocalist and writes the lyrics, the melodies, and that. So he's always approaching it from that perspective, and it's really great to be working with a singer who's also a guitar player, so understands the perspectives of both ends, and he has this really great middle ground. When we started writing together, kind of just happened organically. If we were to just sort of work away on Kevin JP's ideas moving forward, I would have been happy. It's just a great band to sort of be in. But I had this riff that I was playing around on guitar, and I was like, this is just normally what I'm doing for my Imposter Syndrome stuff, and that just wasn't. I was feeling Swerve with it. I was really feeling like it might be a Swerve City, so I just brought it to the table. They really liked it. And we were focusing on something else at the time, but we booked a weekend in Kev's Batch down in Port Waikato, took a mobile studio down. JP, ever the pragmatic, the hardest working guy, I swear, that I know, had it there. He was not just writing, he was recording and mixing on the fly. It was a totally different process to anything I have done before. I take my time. I often take my time. I take my time to flesh ideas out, to do all of that. JP's like, right, play that bass riff. Yep. And then we got the drums going until we had this groove locked, recorded each part straight there. And then Kev worked away on kind of his rhythm, that dun 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 dun, and joining in on the bass riff at the end, which I thought was a really cool idea.
Yeah, I love that part.
Yeah, they kind of, that echoing imitation sort of element. He totally recorded that. Then JP put a bit. We went doing vocals that weekend, and basically, very quickly after that, it was like, right, then the band will cut out, let the drum beat going, bring the riff in, and then I can't remember who it was. It was, I don't know. JP and Kev are both full of great ideas. There was that idea of that bridge break and that dun 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 dun. Yeah. And very quickly, we all just had ideas, and the whole song musically came together in a few hours, and a demo was recorded. Yeah. We did that with 4 songs that weekend.
Yeah.
Which was, I've never done anything like that. I've always wanted to be able to do something like that. And just this real pragmatic way of just focusing on the idea, getting it, the spark recorded, and then just building on it and getting it done.
Yeah.
So cool. And, those songs are in our set now that we're playing on Saturday, March 13th for our release show. So
we're recording this March the 2nd. So yes, there we go. The 13th of March, and I'll be there to review it. So actually, that's a good place for us to just digress before we and move on before we wrap it up. But so you write the music, JP writes the lyrics and the melodies for the vocals.
Yeah, I wrote the bass line. The whole band wrote the music. Everyone just came in with ideas, and it was really, really different for me. Anyway, it was just boom, hey, this would fit. And then JP like, I feel there's a chorus, we need some chords here, so I can do a chorus line over it. And he'd be like, and then very quickly have it. Like, cool, throw that in, and we just had the song. And so we've written a few other songs where we did the same thing like that. We've got this song that we haven't worked on in a while, that we just wrote on the spot in the band room and just threw ideas at each other, and starting to get really weird and technical. Poor Adam's like, where do I play the beat? And it was kind of like, and I'm sitting there going, this is as close to Tool as the band's going to get. I'm a happy man. And
so I guess more so, it might be something I talked to JP about as well, and maybe you can answer is, but when you've got that demo and you've got that music, it's just the music, there's no vocals, there's no lyrics. Right? Yeah. So I want to know, how does JP, and he, as I say, he might have to answer this, but does he go away and then on his way to work or whatever, he listens to the music, and over time he starts to think about what he could sing and how, because the song lyrically is about casting out, essentially what I understand is the politics that are preventing us from progressing as a society, and if we don't, we're all gonna sink like stones. So where did that idea come from quickly?
Yeah, I think there's quite a lot of lack of action on climate change, really is a big sort of central theme in it too. And JP's got his finger right on the pulse, I think, of society in that way with many of those issues. So I would say he's got a fair few ideas or concepts, I'd say, probably a bit like musically, you can have some tonal riffs and whatnot that, will fit in or whatnot. And it's a song that really feels like it's calling for action musically, So I guess he could have approached it from now. I'll ask him actually. I've never really talked to him about where the musical concept came from. From the lyrics.
I mentioned in my review that at the end of that song, his vocals are getting so stretched, like as in a good way, like it's angst and real honest, like as in call of action. I was like, oh man, the more you listen to it, the more you hear it. Fascinating stuff. So a couple of last questions before we wrap up. I always ask people, and I said to you, be prepared. One of the interviews I did actually ask this question, then he actually made me question whether or not I asked the question, so I am still going to ask the question. I just feel like we're going around in circles, but I'm going to word it differently. Okay, so here you go. What is one of your all-time favorite, not the favorite, but what is one of your all-time favorite albums, and 3 words why? Your dog's answering it for you.
Yeah, exactly. 3 words, Frankie. Gosh. Lateralis from Tool. Well, I'd say it rules, but I got to be a little more clear with that. 3 words. It's my favorite.
You're like one of my year 13 students answering a question. No, but that's fine. I mean, at the end of the day...
I'll give you 3 words.
Go.
Timing, tone, attitude.
Perfect. The good things that you've talked about in this entire interview today. Fantastic stuff. And 3 words of advice to give students, people that want to get interested in music. 3 words of advice.
Other than timing, tone, attitude, because I've used that enough already. Rhythm, melody, structure. Perfect. Which is definitely for students, if I can elaborate a little. I think structure is underrated in many ways in terms of the importance. I think I've spoken to you before. I'll try and make it really quick, but I think one of the most important things you can do is as a creative, you need limitations. You really need having unlimited opportunities just can send you into that vortex of a black hole, so many students will start a song and then stop and start a new song. I'm sure you've experienced that. So I say, if you've got 2 ideas, you've got a whole song. Just make one a verse, one a chorus. The intro, instantly you've got verse, chorus, last chorus. Your intro can be the verse without lyrics, and the outro can be the chorus without lyrics. And just start playing it as this basic skeleton, even if it bores you. The 3-minute, turn it into a 2.5, 3-minute, really basic structure. Because all of a sudden, when you start playing it like that, you start to hear ideas that are really relating to that song. Hopefully, musical ideas will come to you, ideas that you wouldn't have come up with when you're struggling to figure out what to do, And the difference is structuring your piece into some kind of format early on will allow for real musical progress and ideas to come in, because you're no longer trying to get to infinity. You can see a rough end product, and you can now work making that the best end product that you can.
And that's great advice. And you know what? That's one of the reasons why at Waiku College, because I'm head of music there, is I teach how to write blues for year 10, because it's the most basic of structures, it's the ground. It's the foundation of all popular music we have today. Without blues, we really wouldn't. I would argue that we wouldn't have it. Dude, absolute pleasure talking to you, man.
I tell you, man, like I've said to you before, I went into jazz school at University Green. I think I came out pretty green, but I learned a language, the language of music, the importance of a language in music. I like to relate that to the hard rock music that I'm into, and all of it comes down to blues. Blues, however, I would say I'm not too green at all, and I love blues. I play it every day. I'm a hard rock guy, but I think my dream would be to totally just be in a Stevie Ray Vaughan covers band if I could play quite to that level for that many hours straight, but God, I love the blues. You're right.
No, great way to finish it. look, so happy to have you on the show, Shannon, and very much appreciative of your time.
Thanks.
Until next time, make sure you check the links down below so you can go and check out the song we've just spoken about and go listen to Swerve City. But yeah, thanks, man. Take care, and we'll talk soon, eh?
Tim, thanks for having me. I think this is a great show you're doing. You're one of the hardest working guys in music I know, both from education and in terms of your the amount of the way you produce. Man, it's inspirational. So thanks for having me on, and I look forward to catching up again soon.
Sounds
See you at the
good.
gig.
Thanks a lot. See you later. Bye.
See you, man.